I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is the SEC's all-time passing leader and touchdown passes leader. It is the one and only Aaron Murray. Speaking of that, Aaron, your records they're incredibly important to me personally as someone who gets to talk about them all the time. They survived a really important era. Like you are
Yes.
now past the COVID extra year where there would have been like maybe an asterisk if they had been
Mhm.
broken, but there is also not an active player in the SEC who's in the top 5 in either career passing yards or career passing touchdowns. So I think your records are going to survive the 2020s after
Yeah.
look, the start that they got off to. I was really putting them in question.
Oh, I agree, especially with the way offenses are nowadays. I mean, I think when, my records were set in an offense that still was pretty much run dominant. We had guys like Todd Gurley, Keith Marshall. We were in the I formation. We didn't have all the RPOs where, you had the option to really throw the football every other time if the box was heavy. And now we get to this more of a spread offenses, up tempo offenses, throw the ball 40, 50 times a game for some of these teams. And so there's just more opportunities. Think back to, Mike Leach at Mississippi State. I mean, their quarterback broke one of my records for completions, but they're throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. So yeah, I survived the COVID extra year, but there is obviously the scare of these players going to get 5 years to play. You're going to have your normal 4 years, then you can maybe redshirt and still play 9 games in a season. So it's just, I don't, I mean, it's just to me, it's not for. I'm not frustrated from a. I'm worried about my record standpoint. I'm more frustrated because the beauty of college football has always been you come, you play, you move on, and then the next batch of players come in. The high school guys, the guys that have been sitting the bench for 2 or 3 years, that have been grinding, waiting their turn. And obviously, there's a lot that needs to get changed in college football from the transfer portal and guys needing to be able to stay and honor a contract for X amount of years, wherever that is, 2, 3 years before they're allowed to move to a new university. And then guys just moving on, going on to the rest of their life, going to the NFL, going to get a job, whatever they may be, to allow that next group of guys, once again, to have an opportunity to live out their dreams as a college football player. So some of those things to me just really need to get cleaned up. And if they do, then to your point, I'll feel even better going forward about maybe some of my records. But there's still going to be chances for these guys to be able to play 5 and 6 years.
Noted Trinidad Chambliss hater, Aaron Murray. Look,
Well, I
here's the
think
good news.
he ain't going to catch me,
Yeah.
2 years. But I am a big fan of him. But still, like having 24, 25-year-olds playing college football is just still one every now and then. You get the Chris Winkies of the world that played baseball and came back to play football. I get that, but man, it is such an advantage when you've played college football for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Over a guy that's a freshman or a sophomore that's played maybe 12 or 13 games in their career. Just like anything in life, the more reps you get, the better you're going to get, the more confident you're going to be. And some of these guys are just playing it at an incredible level. I mean, think of Tom Brady. Later on in his life, he's like, dude, there's nothing you can throw at me that I haven't seen. I've played football for almost 2 decades, or maybe what it was 2 decades. I've seen everything. I've gone against every defense. I know this offense. It just essentially was too easy for him, even at the age of 43, 44. So I would like it to get back to the old college football. 4 years, or you get 5 years to play 4, and that's it. That's done. Move on. Let the freshmen and sophomores get their chance.
Or alternatively, if there are going to be these extensions of college careers, and you got 24 and 25-year-olds, Leonardo DiCaprio girlfriend rule, age limits, just rule out the rest of this certain age group. You can't be in your mid 20s and breaking Aaron Murray's record.
No.
Like, that's just ridiculous. You're fine though. I looked this up. I even did some math. Like Marcel Reed, active leader in the SEC with 5,407 career passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns. He would need a couple of 4,000 passing yard seasons, 40 touchdown seasons. Like Arch, if he stays through 2027 and puts up big numbers, he would have to average 4,532 passing yards, 43 and a half touchdown passes. I think we need to be turning the page to whether or not Maddox, your son, can break your records. Because that's like, it's going to be kids that are like right around his age group that we're probably going to be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you need 4 years. I mean, even with these offenses nowadays, unless you're throwing your first 3 seasons 40 touchdowns a year, which is very difficult to do, even in offenses. And I think too, these guys have extra games. I mean, if you make a nice playoff run, there's 3 or 4 extra games right there. you can play. And I believe those stats go to your overall stats for your career. So there's definitely more games, more opportunities, but still a lot of touchdowns. And, I don't know if I would have gotten it. If we would have beat Alabama in the 2012 SEC championship game, I probably would have gone pro after that season because we would have played Notre Dame. We would have won that game. And it wasn't a very heavy draft class that year of quarterbacks. I remember having that conversation with my parents, like, hey, listen, and my coaches and, some agents or whoever we're talking to at the time, this is not a big time quarterback draft class. Very few guys, very similar to this year's draft class, probably even weaker than this one because you don't have a Fernando Mendoza bona fide, number one pick in the NFL draft. It would be smarter for me to come out this year than the year that I did come out because I think we had 5 guys drafted in the first round in 2013. So just a lot more quarterbacks, a lot more competition. And obviously I ended up getting hurt too, which didn't help things in the senior year. So, I don't think I would have broken the record and played 4 years had we won that game, had we won a national championship. But, as a competitor and someone who wants to win a championship, to get that close, to get 4 yards away from winning the SEC to going to a national championship, it was hard to not say, hey, I want to give it one more go. And the focus was never on, hey, I want to come back to break records. The focus was, I want to come back to essentially finish the business of winning a championship. It just so happened that along the way, I hit that 4-year mark, was able to get all those records.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that. I don't think I've ever heard you say that before, that you would have gone pro. Had you
I mean, that year it was EJ. I think EJ was the only AJ Manuel was the only first round quarterback taken. I think it had EJ, it had Geno, it had what's his name from Kansas State? That's now the head coach, drawing a blank.
Colin Klein.
Yeah, Colin Klein. There wasn't a lot.
Guy.
He was a mid round guy too. So there just wasn't a lot of quarterbacks in that draft. So and plus I was coming off my best season after my junior season. So it would have been smarter for me to come out that year than the year with Bortles and Bridgewater and Manziel and Carr and we had we had just so many quarterbacks that got drafted that season. So it would have been definitely smart for me to walk out as a champion. Like I said, as a quarterback, I've said this over and over again, kind of my case for Stetson Bennett as the greatest quarterback in Georgia history. Stats are great. They're fun. They're sexy, but we play the game to win championships. And if I would have won a championship, I would have done everything that I wanted to do at Georgia. I would have won an SEC championship game. I would have won a national championship. There would be really no reason for me. I would have played 3 years. So when it comes to the amount of games played, I don't think staying would have helped me as a quarterback. I would have played 40 games at that point, something like that. So I didn't need more games under my belt. I would have left after that year and gone pro had we won that game versus Alabama.
That's crazy. Win against Alabama, and then even if you had lost against Notre Dame, which that's the possibility that literally nobody could ever accept that would happen. I think Georgia, you guys would have won by 3 touchdowns at least. Yes. Like you still would have gone to the NFL even if you had lost that game to Notre Dame. It was all about the Bama game.
See, I don't know. I think that obviously I would have seen how I felt. I think it's very similar feeling of you still want to win a championship and you got there, you didn't get it done. Let's come back and try it again. So I would say if we beat Alabama, lost to Notre Dame, probably would have come back to give it another go and utilize that year. Because it's all about the rings, man. It's all about winning championships, which makes what Stetson did, those back-to-back national championships, to me just incredibly special and deserving of that number one spot of the best quarterback in Georgia history. And probably a top 5 player in Georgia history too. And he had the stats to back it up as well. I mean, he played terrific for those 2 seasons. He was a multiple-time MVP in the playoffs and in the championship game. He had his best games in the biggest moments, and he led Georgia and helped lead Georgia to 2 national championships. And no other quarterback has done that. So he's number 1. That was always my goal at the end of the day too.
Last year, you were right around this time, you were talking about how you weren't buying the Arch hype. And, you talked about a 7th rounder, you couldn't beat out a 7th rounder for the starting job. What was your feeling watching him this past year? Do you feel vindicated at all for having that take?
Yeah, because my take was always, let's not crown him before he's actually played a season. I think that there was no doubt that there was, he's a good quarterback. Obviously, he's going to be very, very intelligent, high IQ from just the genes and where he's come from and his uncles and his grandfather. And obviously his father played, football as well. So, he was going to know the X's and O's. He was with Steve Sarkisian, who to me, is still a top 5, top 10 offensive mind in college football. He's with a bunch of talent around him. Like, he's going to be successful. But it was just driving me crazy that the entire offseason leading up to the season, everyone was crowning him the Heisman favorite, that they were crowning him the first pick in the NFL draft come 2026. And my big message was, like, we've seen him play limited games. When he did play big time competition, it wasn't great. Like, think back to 2024 versus Georgia. He didn't come in there and light the world on fire. He had some good moments against lesser opponents. Great. Plenty of quarterbacks can come in there and have great moments against lesser opponents. But you did see a quarterback that I thought was average to good moments early in the season last year. A lot to do, and I felt like I defended him a lot to do with how bad the offensive line was. I thought the offensive line for Texas was abysmal for the majority of the season. I thought the receivers were just okay compared to a year ago, but he gained confidence. He got better. He got more accurate. His footwork looked better. The arm strength improved. So overall, like, I think he's a good quarterback. I just needed to see a full season of it before I start crowning him, like the number 1 pick in the NFL draft come, a month from now and a Heisman favorite. So I think he did improve enough to where I can sit back and say right now, heading into 2027, he should be one of the best quarterbacks in America. Obviously, they got incredible talent in what they did in the transfer portal. If the offensive line improves and it gives him the opportunity to sit in the pocket and do what he needs to do from a quarterback standpoint, he should have a special 2026 season with an opportunity to lead Texas to a championship, with an opportunity to be in the Heisman conversation, and then from there be in the conversation for the number 1 pick or top quarterback pick come 2027. He just was not ready a year ago. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with waiting for someone to develop. Not everyone has to be a Trevor Lawrence, like shows up from their first season and is just absolutely perfect. The guys need a year, 2 years to really get into it. And he utilized it, got better, and I'm excited to see what he can do now.
Who would you rather have for 2026, Arch or Gunner?
Woo! Right now I would say Arch. I think Arch is a better passer. I think Arch has the athleticism that Gunner has. I think Arch has a love for the game that is both of them do. Both of them want to compete. Both of them are willing to put their body on the line. So if you want to kind of go down the list of attributes, I think both really, really good athletes. I think great teammates, passionate about the game of football, smart, high IQs when it comes to the quarterback position. I just think Arch has more of an ability, at least right now, to make all the passes. And hopefully Gunner, uses this offseason to improve on some areas. And we saw those improvements at times last year, being able to layer the football, get it up and over, second level guys, hit those deep cross routes, hit those seam routes. I saw improvements through the season last year which is hard to do, to be able to adapt that fast in season. Usually those things have to come in an off season. So if he's able to make those strides come, the spring ball, summer and fall camp, he'll put himself in the conversation to be once again one of the best quarterbacks in America. But if you had to say, hey, Aaron, pick a quarterback for 2027 that you want to lead your team, it's super close. Don't get me wrong. We're talking about 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in college football. But I would definitely lean Arch and just his, a little bit better passer right now in his career.
Okay, and your totally unbiased opinion, who would you rather have in your ear, Sark or Bobo?
Woo! In my ear. Well, the new Bobo is definitely a little bit more chill compared to the old Bobo, So
what was the old Bobo like, Aaron? Was he
old
calm?
Bobo was screaming, yelling, cussing, I think now that Kirby, but you have to be fair. Mark Richt was the head coach, and Coach Richt wasn't that personality. Coach Richt wasn't the one with the megaphone during practice, yelling, screaming, getting after guys. He allowed, Bobo to do his thing, to be on the guys. He allowed, obviously, Grantham to do his thing on the defense side of the football, where Kirby's a little bit more, obviously, aggressive. Everyone knows. I mean, everyone knows in Athens when practices, because you can hear him for about, a half a mile to a mile around campus screaming and yelling. So I think Bobo doesn't have to be as much as he was with me back in the day, because he lets Kirby do it. But I would love to do both. I've heard nothing but great things from Sark. Like I said earlier, I think Sark's one of the best offensive minds in college football. I think that when he has everything that he needs from an offensive line to receivers to an experienced quarterback, you can have one of the best offenses. I think that's what he's going to have next year. He's going to have skill players. He's going to have an experienced quarterback that's a dual threat guy. And like I said, hopefully a better offensive line than what he had a year ago. So he should be able to get the job done. And you could say the same thing for Bobo.
I'm really interested in Isaiah Canyon coming over from Georgia Tech. It seems like he could develop into that go-to guy. It seems like Georgia's relying on him a lot. I mean, is there a level of concern you have knowing how much Georgia is really banking on Isaiah Canyon and London Humphreys to be the two veterans in that room?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think you're relying on them. And I think you are going to see some more of, kind of what when Georgia was really rolling on offense, the use of tight ends. They loved their freshman tight end from a year ago. You saw him come in and play. Obviously, getting Lawson lucky to come back too. You saw him have some really, really special moments during last season. So you have two athletic tight ends, big body tight ends. You can get in 12 personnel, and then honestly, that's like that to me. That's one of my favorite personnel groups in football right now. And you see it used in the NFL. Obviously, you see it in the college ranks as well. You just can create so many matchups with those bodies, those almost like basketball forward type bodies, 6'3", 6'4", that can run. So I think Bobo's going to be able to use the tight ends a little bit more to help. But yeah, I've said it for years. The receiving position has been a major issue for Georgia. But you look at Cannon, you look at Humphreys. They've recruited well. I mean, they have 3 top guys a year ago, 5-star and a couple 4-star receivers, the highest, essentially the highest group of receivers Georgia has recruited in quite some time. Those guys have to develop. Those guys have to go out there and make plays. So, this goes back to what we talked about earlier. There's so much emphasis nowadays in the transfer portal, getting guys with experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it worked a year ago for Indiana, but I still think Kirby has the mentality of we're going to recruit really good high school guys. We're going to develop them, and you're going to fill in the blanks with the transfer portal. You just have to trust us that the guys that we're developing, while they maybe haven't played a lot, they're still 4- and 5-star guys. So I think that this year, Georgia really needs to make sure that those 4- and 5-star guys they've gotten in the past year or two at the receiving position, they have to be able to go out there and execute at a high level this year. And I think part of it has to be with Gunner too. Gunner has to be a better passer of the football. I thought he was really good a year ago, really, really good a year ago. I still think that he can be even better. And I think the more trust Bobo and Kirby have with Gunner throwing the football vertically down the field, you're going to see guys emerge besides the 2 that you just mentioned, along with those tight ends, and hopefully make a more balanced passing attack for the Bulldogs.
It does kind of remind me of like the situation that you had in 2013 post Malcolm Mitchell injury, where you just kind of lacked a go-to guy, or you at least didn't know who that was going to be at the start of the year. Very different than being a redshirt freshman and knowing, hey, when AJ Green comes back from suspension, like,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna have a go-to guy. Not gonna have to worry about that. Do we overrate that in the media of like not having a go-to guy? Surely one can emerge, and maybe there's gonna be talk about that in the spring. But like, is that something that should be considered a legitimate concern going into the season of like, hey, this quarterback only has a certain amount of completions with this this group of pass catchers? Like, how big is that?
I think it's big for everyone. I think it's big, obviously, for any quarterbacks confident in those receivers to go out there and make plays. I think it's big confidence for the receivers too, to know that you can go out there and execute at a high level. So, confidence is a big part of the game. And if you haven't done something and you haven't executed as a combination of quarterback to receiver consistently, that takes time. But I mean, you look a year ago, Gunner was playing for his first time as a quarterback. Really, I mean, he had a great game. I thought coming in versus Texas, I thought he played really well versus Notre Dame. But you're still talking about a first year starting quarterback. And what did Georgia do? They brought in Zachariah Branch, and we're all excited about it. But if you look at Zachariah's stats heading into his 2 years or 3 years, whatever it was at USC, they weren't anything crazy. There was always a lot of hype about Zachariah Branch, about how athletic he is. And obviously, a lot of had to do with how well he was in special teams and the punt returns. But there was always this hype with him. But then you look at the stats, you're like, well, the stats are good. They're not great. They're not all-American stats. So you have a highly amped up, we're all excited about this guy that has, good stats, not great stats, coming in with a first-year quarterback. And then look what he did. That combination between those two guys a year ago was absolutely tremendous. So I would still lean on an experienced quarterback a guy that's been in the system, Gunner, a guy that's now played, 15, 16 games, can hopefully elevate the inexperience around him. I would rather have an experienced quarterback with talent around him that can make those guys and give those guys build the confidence within them heading into a season, which what Georgia has right now. They have young talent, they have inexperienced talent, they have some tight ends that can kind of balance it off early on and allow the receivers to kind of grow within the system with Gunner.
You started as a redshirt freshman. We've sort of gotten away from that a little bit in college football. Tennessee could be in that spot this year if George McIntyre wins the job or if Faison Brandon wins the job and he starts as a true freshman. No two situations are exactly the same, of course, but do you look at those situations now with more skepticism, having lived it, knowing how challenging that first month on the job can be?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I think it's more anxiety for fans nowadays too, especially that position. It's like, to me, it feels like if you lose a quarterback, everyone's like, well, let's go to the portal. Let's go to the portal. Let's go to the portal. We need an experienced quarterback. We need experience. So I honestly feel bad for young quarterbacks because it's like, how am I supposed to get experience if I can't, if you don't give me that opportunity? And that's when you have to just trust the coaches, that the coaches in that room, have seen these guys, have trust the guys that, hey, we have everything we need right now in Knoxville or Athens or Tuscaloosa or wherever it may be to go out there and compete at a high level. And I think fans get a little bit antsy at that position. So I love the fact when guys are able to kind of sit for a year or two, learn the offense, and you have to trust the track record of what Tennessee's been able to do at the quarterback position. It's an offense that you say all you want that it's quarterback friendly, but there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, what I see has to be exactly what the receiver sees. The timing has to be impeccable. I thought the offense grew a lot a year ago with Joey when it comes to throwing the ball over the middle of the field, which really opened them up and turned them into one of the best offenses once again in the SEC. So, like I said, that staff knows what it takes to run that offense at a high level. And if they believe that those guys are the right guys for the offense, they should be fine. Like I said, it's difficult in the sense of you have to be on the same page with the receivers. But once you get it down, man, it's a really fun offense to be a part of. Obviously, you'll put up some crazy stats. It's not my favorite in the sense of I just still don't think it's complementary enough to be able to truly compete for championships. But when it comes to getting a quarterback to go out there and execute at a high level, I think those guys will be ready to go.
That was nicer than what you said about the Jeremy Pruitt offense at Tennessee. That was way nicer.
Well, I don't know if I say anything about the Jeremy Pruitt offense.
Yeah, that's true.
More just who's running the show there.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. The transfer quarterbacks in the SEC, it looks like they're going to have a huge say in how the league shakes out this year. Let's say that the SEC will strip Aaron Murray passing records if you get this wrong. No pressure. Between Sam Levitt, Byron Brown, Kenny Minchie, Aaron Philo, Austin Simmons, and I don't know which guys you've had a chance to look at so far or which guys like you know better than others, but of those guys, who would you bet on being an all SEC quarterback in 2026?
Yeah, I'm going to put my money on Sam Levitt. I talked about with top coaches and top offensive minds in college football. I think Lane Kiffin is at the top of that list. What he's been able to do, developing quarterbacks, the offenses, and doing that at Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has done a great job. Obviously, that fan base is completely bought in from an NIL standpoint. They've really opened up their checkbook to bring in top talent on both sides of the football to compete for championships. But, as we know, and I kind of talked about all last year, LSU is just more consistent with that. LSU is going to be able to get top tier talent a little bit easier than Ole Miss year in and year out. And, part to do with Louisiana's just got so much talent and they own the state. People in that state want to go to LSU. And we've seen year after year after year after year, elite receivers, sometimes come out of nowhere, 2-star guys, 3-star guys turn to NFL guys. So I think the combination of Lane Kiffin, how good he is as a play caller, Sam Levitt, and what he's been able to do for the past years. I had an Arizona State. I actually had the game a year ago that he got hurt. So obviously did a lot of film breakdown leading into the game, had an opportunity to watch him for at least a half before he went down with the injury. And I love him, man. He's a competitor. He's a great athlete. He's a willing runner. He's a very good thrower of the football. So I think you pairing experienced quarterback, has all the tools you want with Lane Kiffin, with the talent that we know LSU is going to have, I think Sam Levitt and LSU are going to have a special year. Like, I think LSU could compete for an SEC championship and for a playoff spot come 2026.
Last one for you. I don't think I've asked you QB1 in the SEC for 2026. Don't worry about NFL draft stuff. Don't worry about anything, 5-star recruit, this, that, or the other. Who's going to be your guy when you have to come out with those rankings and probably
Ooh.
have talking about them like Red Ron Media Days?
I probably lean on Arch. I just think, like I said,
Look at
the way
you.
he finished the season, I was super impressed with the bowl game. I thought he was terrific in that bowl game. The arm strength got better. There's some kooky stuff that we saw early on the season. Think back to the Ohio State game where it's like, man, is he hurt? What's going on? The ball's not really popping out. And I think a lot has to do with confidence. When you're not confident throwing the football, and obviously Ohio State's defense was elite. You're playing on the road, but when you're not confident, you kind of it's like me trying to hit a golf swing. If I got a club in my hand, I'm not confident, and probably going to miss the ball or skull it or chunk it. You got to go up there with confidence. And the same thing's playing with quarterback position. The ball's not going to pop if you're worried about making a mistake or you're worried about what you're seeing out there. So I think now that he's had that full season, he's confident in the offense. He's confident executing it. He's confident playing in the SEC. You're going to really see all the tools in the tool bag come out for Arch Manning this year. So I think he would probably be my number one and kind of Chambliss right behind him. I'm interested to see what Chambliss looks like, without the, his OC and obviously head coach coming into the season. But I love the way that he played all year, a year ago. So I'd kind of probably lean on those two with Gunner kind of coming right behind him.
This is the art of the take. This is exactly it right now. This is the fully formed take of being on the other side of it, going in and then being like, oh, actually, you know what? I realize everybody's backing off now. Now is when I'm going to buy stock. I've done the same thing with Bobo. So we're
Yeah.
we're all just morphing our opinions over the course of time. Nothing is ever locked in forever. Aaron, you're the best, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.